Are you ready?
Ready.
Off we go. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Sam Hasty, educational psychologist, licensed clinical social worker. Welcome to Building Better Bonds. On today's episode, we look very specifically at four-dimensional love. Now, you're going to hear quite a bit about four-dimensional love over the entire series. This is a four-part series, but we begin here with an explanation because we believe that this is going to set the stage for much of what the Building Better Bonds podcast is really about. I am pleased to have joined me in the studio today four very, very special friends who come with quite a bit on what love really is, could be, should have been, or what they want it to be. So stay tuned. By the way, subscribe, go and visit our website, which is drbetterbonds.com, and share your thoughts, feelings, and comments with us. But for now, find a spot, get your favorite beverage, and jump in and join us because, if only in my mind, we're going to educate you. We're going to teach you some things about love. May introduce my guests. First, in the person of Tanika, and there is Dre, my very dear friends, and also Harrison and Rosa. You're going to learn so much more about them as they share their own stories, as they choose to, and as we talk about this concept of love. So, four-dimensional love, what is it? Before I get into the actual description, I think it's only fair that I share with you perhaps where the whole idea came from, and this will go back to about 2003. In 2003, I just moved to Fayetteville, North Carolina, where I was teaching at Fayetteville State University. And for those of you who know anything about Fayetteville, North Carolina, it is the home of Fort Bragg. Name has changed a couple of times, Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty, now Fort Bragg again, I think. Let's see if it changes again. Anyway, that's not my focus. I was in Fayetteville, North Carolina to teach at Fayetteville State University. And while I was there in 2003, the United States had just gone to war. You will recall that. Very unfortunate incident. We went to war. And I was a member of a church in Fayetteville, and given that Fayetteville is a military town, we had numerous deployments which ravished families. And so church leaders said, Dr. Hasty, we're really out of our element here in trying to deal with the impact that the war is having on families. Would you be willing to help us in creating a counseling ministry? Gladly, gladly. So said, so done. And as I started working with individuals, and particularly with families, what I found was that the traditional models of love and relationships on which I was trained wasn't really giving the answers that people really needed. And quite frankly, I couldn't figure it out in the beginning. But I stayed with it, and eventually what came out of that is what has been referred to from then until now as the four-dimensional love model. Now, you may have questions, where may I get more information about it? Listen, I've been writing the book on it for quite some time. The book still isn't published, okay? But maybe sometime in the not too distant future, the book is coming sometime in the future, as I will be getting that done at some point. What you will have available to you is the actual questionnaire, and you'll understand a little bit more about that. But a questionnaire has been created. You'll be able to go to the website, and on the website, you will be able to answer questions in reference to the four-dimensional love. The beauty about that is that you will be able to see exactly where you are in the model itself. You'll figure it out here in just a minute. But that will help you have a better understanding of where you are, and given where you are, what you need to do in order for you to create, nurture, and grow, ideally the kind of relationship that you would like to have. Now let me say this, as we talk about relationships on the Building Better Bonds podcast, we're referring specifically to romantic relationships. Now, there will be times when we will talk about other kinds of relationships, but this podcast is really dedicated to romantic relationships. We're talking about relationship with significant others. We're going to cover the gamut. We're going to go from pillar to post, so to say, from wall to wall, but it's really about romantic relationships. So, with that as a way of introducing the subject, let me now turn more specifically to four-dimensional love. And my guests are going to jump in with me, and you yourself will have access to the four-dimensional love model, particularly in the form of the video and the graphic. So go back, have a look, study it. Again, jump in with questions that you may have in social media, and we certainly will invite those questions. We will do our best to answer them as quickly as we possibly can. But join me now as I invite my guests to share their thoughts, views, perspectives, understandings on the four-dimensional love model. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome. As I said to the viewing audience, we're going to talk here about the four-dimensional love concept. And Harrison, I know that you are very familiar with it, given the time that we've spent together over, I dare not say otherwise, it ages you rather than me, right? So I do have a questionnaire that will kind of drive the conversation for us a little bit. But do you want to begin by giving just an overview of your understanding and particularly perhaps why it has meant so much to you?
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for having us and enjoy being part of this podcast. But yes, four-dimensional love is, more than anything, the best way to describe it in one sentence is it is a roadmap to getting from where you are here to getting to where you want to be at that unconditional covenant love that we all want to be a part of, especially in our romantic relationships. It takes you from every level, every stage, and gives you the true understanding of where you sit in that threshold and how you can, get to that level and climb your way up through the map that you have here. I think it's really important to have that. A lot of the things that we learn through school isn't taught about that. We have our different religions that kind of help us guide us through that, but it really doesn't give us the scientific way to get to that unconditional love. And I think that's what is the most important, right? We're spiritual beings, and it helps you get to that agape love that we're all desiring.
I love it. I love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me jump back in and let me flesh out for you very quickly the model itself, and then let me ask my guests to come back in and answer some questions in reference to it, and that'll help clarify some things for you as well. Four-dimensional love says, and particularly if you have seen the video, and as you will, just again, you have access to it through the website as well. Four-dimensional love says that Jack and Jill, when they first come into a relationship, it is because of the particularly visual attraction and physical attraction that they have for each other. Theoretically, and by the way, four-dimensional love is a theoretical model. And what I mean by that is, it's not that it's right or wrong, it's a way of trying to understand and have a conversation about this construct we call love. I'm not going to try to get too scholastic or too academic on you, but theories can not be proven nor disproven. Again, you cannot prove nor disprove a theory. You either find support for it, particularly scientific support, or you find no support for it. Now, without going into all of the work that has been done in reference to four-dimensional love, very, very strong scientific support has been found for the model. I will share that in greater detail, maybe even put that on the site for you for those of you who would want to investigate that and find out more about it. But four-dimensional love says Jack and Jill, and allow me to use them just to illustrate this. Jack and Jill, they come into a relationship in the beginning on the basis of visual attraction. Four-dimensional love says that if the relationship goes beyond visual attraction, where they say, I think I have an interest in this person and we have an interest in each other, it will move to the very first dimension that I refer to as selfish love. Now, why do I refer to it as selfish love? Because the model says that Jack, when he meets Jill, he is primarily interested in being physical. Jack wants to hold her hands, he wants to exchange kisses with her, and if she would allow him, he wants to be sexually intimate. That is very selfish of Jack. Allow me that. But so is Jill. Jill is selfish because rather than being so focused on the physical component of love, if you may, Jill is more interested in what I refer to as the psychosocial component. What do I mean by that? Jill is really looking for reliability, trust, trustworthiness, stability. Jill wants to know, hey, Jack, if some cubbies come along, are you in a position to take care of them, particularly financially? Are you going to be present? Are you going to show up? Are you going to help co-parent these cubbies? And so Jill is in her place of selfishness. Jack is in his place of selfishness. And we refer to that as the first dimension in the four-dimensional love model, selfish love. But at some point, Jack and Jill, they recognize that if this relationship is to grow, they cannot stay there. And so they then move to what I refer to as exploratory love. Now, why exploratory love? Because Jack recognizes that he needs to explore Jill's needs, wants, and desires. If he's going to get what he wants with his selfish self, he needs to explore Jill's needs, wants, and desires. And so he is willing to explore that, particularly through conversation and spending time, etc., etc. And so he does that. But so does Jill. She is also at exploratory love because she is interested in what Jack has to offer, particularly if he's able to provide her needs, her wants, and her desires. And so that relationship now is at exploratory love. But very seldom does it stay there. It moves to the third dimension that I refer to as contractual love. What does that mean? That Jack moves away from selfishness, has moved to exploring Jill's needs, wants, and desires, and now accepting that Jill's needs, wants, and desires must be met in order for his to be met. He now moves to a place of contractual love where he says, I'll give you what you need, what you want, and what you desire if you give me what I need, want, and desire. Jill then says, I too am capable of giving you what you need, want, and desire. And at that point, the contract is pretty much sealed. In most societies, that contract takes on the complexion of marriage. Marriage isn't the only means by which individuals can experience love or spend time together or have kids, but for the sake of discussion here, and as is generally true in most civil societies, marriage is in fact the institution into which individuals go, where they give birth to children, where they have time together, and they build their lives from there. So allow me that assumption and argument to further flesh this out. So now Jack and Jill have both moved from visual attraction into the first dimension, which is selfish love, into the second dimension, which is exploratory love, and into the third dimension, which is contractual love. Four-dimensional love says that that relationship can stay there, and in fact, most relationships never get beyond contractual love. But the argument is that if that relationship is to experience its very best, it will need to move to the fourth dimension, which I refer to as covenant love. What does that mean? It means that if Jack ever gets to the point where he says to Jill, Jill, my love for you really is more about me than it is about you. Not in some egotistical, selfish way, but the idea is that my love for you is that I will love you whether or not you love me. say, what? That's a foreign concept. It is. It is. That is covenant love. I don't need love to be reciprocated because my love for you is really about me providing for you whether or not you provide for me. It is the highest level of love. According to four-dimensional love, you do understand that that's the model. And the whole point is that Jill herself would move there, not because Jack has, that's not covenant love. Jill would move there because she just wants to be the best possible version of herself for her first and foremost, not in some selfish way, but for her. And because of that, Jack then becomes the recipient of the love that she is. If that sounds like a foreign concept to you, it just might be. So more about that in just a little bit. But for the sake of describing and explaining the model, so let's say both Jack and Jill are now at covenant love. Four-dimensional love says that relationship will remain there if Jack and Jill continuously do what they did to get there, which is what? To be patient, kind, gentle, giving, and forgiving. Just to name a few of the attributes and qualities and characteristics of what I refer to as true, genuine love. And the extent to which they're able to do that and to remain there, that relationship remains at the highest possible level of love. But if they don't, the relationship experiences recession. The principle of recession says the last thing in is the first thing out. And so what happens, let's say for a minute now, for the sake of discussion, Jill begins to recede. She will recede and go from covenant love back to contractual love. And as she does, you can hear her say, Jack, my love for you is no longer unconditional, but I'll still take care of your needs. If Jack recedes, he will say, Jill, my love for you is no longer unconditional, but I'll still take care of your needs as well. And if something isn't done between the two of them to bring that relationship back to covenant love, then in all probability, it will continuously recede. Because relationships very seldomly, if ever, quite frankly, remain stagnant. They either progress or they regress. And in this case, that recession goes from contractual love back to exploratory love. And as it does, Jill might be heard to say, Jack, my love for you is no longer unconditional. I am not going to take care of your needs, even though I understand what they are. Jack would be heard to say, Jill, my love for you is no longer unconditional, and I'm definitely not going to take care of your needs. Again, even though I too understand what they are. And so now, once again, that relationship has gone from covenant to contractual and all the way back to exploratory. Once again, the principle is very simply this. Either move back to covenant, and by the way, you don't necessarily have to go back through contractual in order to get to covenant. More about that a little bit later. But if you are at exploratory, in all probability, you will recede to the first dimension, which is selfish love. And as you do, you can hear Jill say, Jack, my love for you is no longer unconditional. I'm not going to take care of your needs, even though I understand what they are, but I still want you to take care of my needs. I still want you to provide and protect. I still want you to be that stable and reliable force. And if Jack were to recede all the way back to selfish love, you would hear him say, Jill, my love for you is no longer unconditional. I'm not going to take care of your needs, even though I understand what they are. But baby, I still want that roll in the hay. if something isn't done to bring that relationship back to ideally where it needs to be, which is covenant love, in all probability, in time, Jack and Jill will leave that relationship, separate from each other, and start another one all over again, only to find themselves back at dimension number one after they find another attractive person. And so that cycle continues and continues and continues. And we unfortunately have seen the results of that, particularly in the United States of America. Now, there are other places that have published various statistics on things like marriage and divorce, but quite frankly, the ones with which I'm most familiar are the ones in the United States of America. That is home for me. That has been home for the past 36 years. It's the area that I've studied most in terms of relationships, and so it's the one with which I'm most familiar. And as we move through the podcast, not just in this episode, but in other episodes, you're going to hear me refer to a lot of statistics based on American population. Now, that isn't the only lens through which we're able to look at things, but I choose to do that because those are the lenses with which I'm most familiar. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to make reference to others, but I choose to use those lenses because that's where I got my training, that's where I spend most of my time in reading the literature, particularly to inform my practice as I work with my clients. That said, the idea of four-dimensional love is fairly straightforward. That ideally what we want is to be at covenant love. By the way, although I've described what seems like a quote-unquote ladder step progression, it doesn't mean that relationships have to take that particular format. Let me restate that. Relationships don't have to begin at selfish and then go to exploratory and then to contractual and then to covenant. A relationship may go from visual attraction all the way to covenant love. And your question is, how do we get there? Not now. More about that a little bit later. But there is definitely a way to get there. But enough about the model, because having described that, I want to now invite my guests to share with you their own thoughts, feelings, views on the model itself before we take a deeper dive into looking at the definition of love and whether or not A, B, C, X, Y, Z are required, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, folk, jump on in here. Four-dimensional love, there's a description, there's an explanation. When you hear it, what you think of it just in terms of the model itself, or share any of your thoughts or views or feelings about any of this that you've heard. And by the way, feel free to disagree with the model in any way that you choose, no matter how wrong they are, okay?
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Jump in,
Okay.
Talk to me.
First of all, thank you so much for bringing light to this complex theme that I think it's very complicated for most of the people in the planet. It's something basic that all of us has to have more knowledge.
Sure.
We don't. So that's for the beginning. And then I have doubts about the map, because first of all, thank you also, because you bring us this map, then I think is something that we need, because we were using the wrong map most of the time.
Of course.
At least in my case.
Of course.
But I have a doubt about the end or the top, let's say, in your graphic when you talk about covenant love.
Sure.
Because something in myself think that can be very dangerous if you you don't apply the reciprocity in the relationship, in any kind of relationship. So how about if you are dealing just with your movie inside to your mind?
Sure.
It's not with the other person. So
Sure.
you are not taking the feedback. So you are not real in that relationship.
Sure.
You're in your own movie. You wanna, you know.
So let me make sure I understand. You're saying that one would need to be careful, or maybe the weakness in the model is that a person can
Take advantage.
take advantage of you.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, before I comment on that, let me invite the others of you. Do you see something similar? What are your thoughts? What are your views? Dre, you want to share?
You actually coming here, I have the same thought that Rosa had. But I'm big on reciprocity.
Gotcha.
I don't know if it's how I was raised. I don't know if it's just how I think. But I do think it's hard for someone to love when they're not being loved, when it's not being reciprocal.
Gotcha.
And then the other thing about the model I'd like to ask you about is when it recedes, right? I mean, because there are two individuals there, is it always simultaneous? Can someone stay at covenant love while someone goes to contractual love, right? Because someone chooses to still love unconditionally while the other person chooses that it's going to be reciprocity or nothing else. So those are the questions that I have regarding the model.
Excellent question. So let me go ahead and answer that. So in terms of reciprocity, I understand you correctly. So the idea of reciprocity is an interesting one. And I think, once again, we've been told, taught, and trained to believe to look for that in life in general. But if that's true, is there ever an altruistic part of us that just gives because that's who we are? Or does it's true maybe in other areas of life, but not in significant other relationships, that somehow you cannot be altruistic there either? Am I making any sense to you? Yeah, jump in here.
I think ultimately, that is the ultimate goal. And I do understand both of your points. But I think that if you're in the contractual state, you've agreed that you're going to move on to this next level. And it's both of you, that are moving on to this covenant love. So when you say reciprocity, I feel like we've made that decision. That's how we got to covenant love. I think that's the hope. And if you start receding, maybe it's because someone broke the covenant, just like the marriage or the bond or something like that.
Yeah, but at that point, you are assuming the other person has the same intention as you. Maybe you have the intention, and they, liar people they're gonna tell you.
Sure.
Oh, I'm gonna lie, and I'm gonna take advantage of you. They're gonna just do it because it's the way they live.
So this might be an idealistic scenario, but if we've moved up through the steps or skipped 3 steps, we did it together. So at some point, we came to an agreement that we were going to continue moving forward. I think that if we're making decisions to move forward with someone we know who's not trustworthy, we skip something down the bottom. That's how you get to covenant, right. I think.
And to your point as well too, is so when you get to contractual love, just think of it as a contract, right? Like, so he mentions the marriage contract. There's always terms and conditions when it comes to a contract, right? And when you go to a covenant, which is unconditional love, those terms and conditions, you're doing it truly for yourself. Like, you are in that relationship because you are enlightened, and there's nothing that you could do or not do or say that could ever make me not love you, right? Because that is the baseline of who we are. Now, again, what's interesting is, and probably what we'll get into, is the love is the same, but your relationship and your role with that person can change. I could love you tremendously, want nothing but the best from you. But if you've harmed me in some way, or if you lied to me, I don't have to have a relationship with you. I can love you. I will always be kind, gentle, patient, giving, and forgiving to you. But I don't need to be in a relationship with you, right? I don't need to be in a contract with you. I don't need to explore the things that make you happy or not happy, because I know we've already talked about it, and you are not honoring that agreement or that contract. But when you get to that unconditional level, it's really for yourself. Because there's nothing that, you help people because you care, right? We choose our professions because we care about what we do, right? It's a passion. Whether, a lot of people say, it's not for the money, it's for because I love what I do, right? And that's where it comes into our romantic relationship. So what helped me really understand this is, yes, we always talk about romantic relationships, and that's what this podcast is for. But when you put it into all your relationships, your professional relationships, your friend relationships, right? Your personal relationships, your family, and then also you're romantic, it really helps you build, because think about mothers. Mothers are unconditional.
Yes.
They aren't getting anything from their children, and they are unconditional over and over and over. There's nothing that they will do.
That's a cheat code.
And kids lie to their parents all the time.
No, yeah, I know, but that has another sense because that is for biologically you need it. You need that your child continues with life because you're gonna die eventually. So
Sure.
that's biologically. That's why in this case it's acceptable for me, but in the other case it's not. I mean, for me, some key word in relationship is reciprocity, but another key word is maturity.
Of course.
And that is the base to build a relationship and healthy relationship.
Of course.
So, and maturity is take care of by yourself. You have, it's not a choice. You must to take care of yourself, nobody else, if you are mature, if you are adult. So that's why for me, this last step, it's a little bit confused.
And I get it. I get it. So let me see if I can jump in here a little bit more to try to address the confusion. Covenant love says, I am love. That's who I am. I am patient. I am kind. I am gentle. I am giving. I am forgiving. And because I am love, I do not need to be loved. And that's the thing that makes the difference. That's the thing that makes the difference. Here's what I mean by that. Again, we've been told, taught, and trained to believe. Find someone who loves you. And I think that is disastrous.
Right.
Because now what happens, we are constantly looking outside of ourselves for love. We're constantly looking outside of ourselves for love. And because we're constantly looking outside of ourselves for love, anytime we believe that we are not the recipients of love, whether or not it is true is immaterial, completely immaterial. Anytime we believe that we're not the recipients of the love that we are entitled to, then it means that we now move into a different place. We now move into a different place. So, four-dimensional love says, forget that. You really don't need to be loved. You need to be L-O-V-E. You need to personify the characteristic qualities and traits. Healthy relationships are the ones where individuals encourage each other to be love as opposed to look to be loved.
But you don't think that is a quality, it's a previous quality to try to have any mature relationship?
Absolutely.
Any healthy.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to be there in order to do it as individuals.
Right. That's why I say you don't necessarily
Exactly.
have to follow all of the steps of the four-dimensional love. Four-dimensional love as a model is simply describing what typically and generally happens.
Right.
What typically and generally happens. But if you very good example. Let's assume for a minute that, and in fact, I had a session just in the not too distant past, mom and dad and kids, and I was explaining this overall concept to them. And I said to them, the best thing that you could ever do for your children is to be love, L-O-V-E, and to teach them to be love. So that they aren't looking to you for love, you aren't looking to them for love. But here's the secret. The extent to which each of you is being love. So one person is being L-O-V-E, the other person is being L-O-V-E, and by, here we go, by propinquity, right? Propinquity, which means nearness. We get the word propinquity from, it's the kissing cousin to approximately, right? Propinquity. And by mere fact that Rosa is being L-O-V-E, Harrison becomes the recipient of the love she is being because she wears that.
I can see your kindness. I can see your gentleness. I can see your patience. And I can see that you're doing that for yourself. Mm-hmm. And sometimes just that light alone, others pick that up and they will do the same thing. So as long as you're the that little light, and you're shining, other people will, because there's no Bluetooth here. There's no wire connected to one another,
Correct.
right? But when you can feel like, and so that's why, love is not a feeling. Love is a being, right? And then if you are religious, a lot of our religions teach us that, right? Like, Jesus and all these different things. It is an enlightenment of that unconditional covenant love within yourself. And when you are kind to yourself, patient for yourself, gentle to yourself, other people will realize that, and they will pick that up, and they will reciprocate that as well too. That's what they do. And if you are constant, and you are, it comes with discipline, right? You have to really stay focused on that, because once you kind of slip out of that, people see like, oh, what's going on today, right?
Yeah, and your true colors.
Yeah, exactly. Or what
Correct.
happened? Like everyone has bad days, right? But sometimes you have to. But that's why you have this relationship with yourself, with God, and with your partner, right? Because you want to be loved for yourself, so they can be recipients of that, and that is the connection. Because if you try to do it for somebody else, it almost goes immediately back to selfish love. Like, oh no, I only love you because you love me is truly selfish. It's like the most.
It is.
You only want to be loved instead of it's like receiving. I'm only giving because I'm receiving.
There you
Right.
go.
But I think it also depends on what your definition of love is. I mean,
Exactly.
this light and Jesus and maturity is really your personal construct, right? And also
Sure.
what you've learned and what you learned from your family.
Or
so
him.
I suspect, sure, and Dr. Sam as well. So I suspect if we kind of talk about what that would be, it
Sure.
would be different for everybody.
It is, but a lot of the things that what we confuse love with is romance, and that is what he says, the stinking thinking that majority of the world has bought into, is that we think love is romance, but that's not really what it is. Romance was first a construct separately that was created. And he'll go in during the medieval times with all that was, and the movies and the plays,
Right.
and it was designed for women, and these stories and these plots for these romantic storylines. But in reality, again, you go back to, what's been written, for thousands of years, like what love really is, why we are truly human beings
Yeah.
on Earth, right? When certain disasters happen and all that, it's really the love that connects us. We're human beings here. And it's not like the same way, we talk about the romantic side of it, but it really comes down to your friends. It really comes down to your professional. I didn't even know you guys when you walked in the room, but I already knew that I had love for you, and I was going to be love amongst you because of the relationships that we all have together, right? You didn't know me yet, but you're gonna feel that, and that's what drives community. That's what drives neighborhoods. That's what drives nations and people to come together, right? So it's not just like yes, I want to be romantic with this person,
Right.
and
But
behind
it could
closed
be
doors.
yes, I want to be respected.
Sure,
It could be
the
yes,
romance
and- yeah.
is an important part of it,
Right.
right? We don't want to that could be part of the love languages, but that's not
Yeah.
that's not why we're here. We
Yeah.
came here for an experience, whatever that is. We're here 100 years on Earth, and that is to experience love,
Yeah.
to be that, right?
I do kind of feel like romance is kind of a little bit of a, I don't know.
It's a construct.
Yeah, but it's kind of an unevolved way of looking at it. It's just one construct, right? We're in
Sure.
2025, we're modern. We would have different roles. If we were having this discussion 50 years ago, her and I couldn't be here, Rosanna, right? So I feel like our understanding of what love is has changed because our roles have also changed in our families and in our lives.
Sure.
And so romance is part of it, and I'm sure men want to be romanced too. But I think it's very complicated, and so for me, love is not just romance. Yeah, it's part of it, but it's not very significant.
Agreed.
And we know from Rosa, love is a lot of maturity as well, what you bring into the
course.
relationship, so I feel like it's a little bit deeper, than the plays and the love letters.
Of course.
So-
It definitely has to be present, right? And I think that men are more romantic than women, because think about it. We're the ones that buying the flowers for you. We're going out doing things for you. Think about it.
Trump.
I don't know. Somebody has to
This is-
remind you, though, Harrison. What day
Listen,
is it?
at the end of the day, if somebody wants to do something, they are going to do it.
Yeah.
And they are going to plan for it. Listen, a man thinks about something, and we're going to the difference between men and women in the second segment, but I mean, we think about things 10,000 times over before, women maybe think of it 10 times. That's just, I think, biology. Trust me on this. And if someone's behavior is showing you, it's the truth, right? If someone's saying something, if someone's doing something, believe that, right? Because they've already thought about it before. Don't say, trust.
Sure.
I'm
Yeah,
giving
I'm
you
in
the.
agreement
I'm giving
with
you
that.
the.
The sign.
It's the truth.
Dre, you have a thought.
Well, I think the theory is beautiful.
Well, thank
right?
you.
I do think theory is beautiful, but I also think that we're living in this human condition and this human existence, right?
Sure.
Where we're all flawed, right? So I could be love, most of the times, or
Correct.
it may be a month or a year where the job sucks and I can't be love anymore.
Correct.
And
Correct.
and then I think the theory in my mind starts to crumble, right? Because of our human existence, because
Correct.
of who we are and how we are and how we adapt to life and the conditions that life throws at us.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I hear you. I would argue that point
You
in
should.
this way. And I think one of the beauties of forget the model for a minute, but one of the beauties of being in companionship. Now, if you include this concept of covenant, agape, unconditional love, even for a minute, as Dre experiences something other than covenant love. Let's say he happens to recede all the way back to selfish love because of what life has thrown at him for a minute or two. The beauty of being in companionship with someone who themselves are being loved, they are able, here we go, to carry you when you're not able to carry yourself. Because they understand the human condition. They understand that, yeah, this Dre that I'm seeing, that's not the Dre who wants to be love. But for whatever reason, what he's experiencing right now, he's not able to be love in the way that he ideally would like to be, Love. So guess what? I'm going to continuously be love, and as I continue to be love, he will continue to be the recipient of the love that I am being until he is able to be love for himself all over again. Am I making any
It
sense
makes
to you?
sense, but it does go back to the value system of the individual, of each individual.
Absolutely.
In the relationship,
Absolutely.
Right?
And the standard.
Absolutely. And at one point, Harrison may have referenced this or may even have stated it. And I think Rosa at length alluded to it in some way as well. And even as you talk about maturity. This is why it is so important, even when we get ready to select a partner, we look at the standards that they have established for themselves. So that if the standard is, for example, that I am trustworthy, I am dependable, I am reliable, even in the face of, and let's include faithful as well in that, right? I am these traits and qualities and attributes, even in the face of tough and difficult times. And ideally, what you really want is two individuals where the standards are aligned.
Right.
Yes.
Where the standards are aligned. Now,
Has to be.
it's the in other circles and other programs and other shows, they talk about compatibility, and this is one type of compatibility, right? The standards. In other episodes on down the road, we're going to talk about compatibility. It's absolutely critical. So it is true that birds of a feather flock together. There is some truth to opposites attract. I believe for the most part, in my mind, that begins and ends somewhere. But I tend to subscribe more to birds of a feather flock together.
Alignment.
Yeah.
Alignment more than compatibility
Yeah.
is more than anything. Because people could be opposite cultures, opposite religions. It's like his motto is any two will do, right? And being in a diverse place like South Florida, it can be that, right? You know, male, female, you know, black, white, you know, Muslim, you know, Catholic, you know, all those different things are opposite spectrums. But if you are aligned with the core values of this is the standard for love, this is the standard, because no one's ever going to be like, oh, I met this amazing person, but they are the most irresponsible,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
You're never going to do that. Any culture, and all around, like, oh my God, you know, like
Yeah.
you're not, he is just untrustworthy. Like there's just certain levels that these characteristics are just truly you want to be aligned, and if they don't have that same standard, they won't hold themselves to the accountability of covenant love.
But not everybody has the clarity that you are expressing now.
Well, that's why we're here. You know, that's why we're teaching these people.
Who we think when we find
He didn't
somebody
start out there.
Yeah.
You didn't start out there.
When I
did
first
you?
met him, I mean, I had like how you said, I had my family, right? I was raised Catholic, Italian Catholic. You know, I had my family, and we had, you know, you go to church, and you know, you have those things. But when you get into the nitty gritty of the science of it all, that's when you really start to, like, you know, that's for all of us. I think once you go to the, you know, the educational level, that's when you can really start applying these things to your life. Because it's like a job, right? You learn these skill sets to learn a job, right? And if you learn these skill sets to be in a good relationship, that's how you get there. But you're right. I mean, and it's tough because we don't learn this in school, right? We go all the way to 12th grade, 18 years old, and you don't even get an hour of this, right? Like, you know, they give us, you know, sex ed, but that has nothing to, we shouldn't even be talking about that if we don't even know how to interact with one another, right? You know, we don't even know how to build healthy relationships and friendships. You know, we have all these different, you know, cliques and all these other things, and it's like, it's so unhealthy. Like this, you're right. It should be taught, it was taught in the nuclear family to some degree, but you know, both parents are working, and they're gone 8 hours a day, and you know, it's like, you know, you don't even have the grandparents anymore in the household either.
What happened to the grandparents?
Well, they're not. They're in the homes. They put them in these 55 and up homes
Yeah,
instead of living in the, like, oh, grandma's right around the corner.
Yeah.
You know, the kids are
There
going.
is hope, though. Let me just let you know that we have not perished. You know, there is hope.
We're still
you know,
here.
and I think that
Right.
people are learning these things.
Agreed.
Yes, some from environments like this, some from a home with one parent or two dads or two moms, some through friends because someone knows someone as involved as yourself.
Of course.
You know, so I think that maybe not everybody is starting from zero.
Sure.
You know, and we are looking for people that we align with. I think if we're here, we can say, yes, we're not going to pick someone up off the street that, you know, don't see things the same way that we do. So I think, yeah, I think that we are all learning, and I think that this is a process that we're going through at different levels.
Agreed.
You know, but we just kind of have to figure out what our value system is, and you find someone that has the same value system, and then you kind of start moving up or moving through.
Agreed.
You know.
Agreed.
But it's still funny though, because the first what we call them levels.
Dimension.
The first
Correct.
dimension is
Selfish.
selfish, right? So value systems are out the door on the first dimension, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's just, I like the way you look, right? And once we get there, sometimes we ourselves, if we don't love ourselves enough, we throw our value system out the door.
100%.
You know, and then
You're spot on.
you think you could continue going to the other dimension, but you've already thrown your value system out the door, so then you'll never get there.
Right.
You know?
It's true.
And unfortunately, that mistake is made too often. Too often that mistake is made. And what begins to happen is, and especially in early stages of the relationship, because the body does what it does, and particularly the brain, and particularly neurotransmitters like dopamine and oxytocin and vasopressin, right, and cortisol. And
Alcohol.
you throw in alcohol, and that's a completely different thing altogether, right? So what tends to happen is that even in the very beginning, we come into the initial phase, and the attraction is there, and we feel this attraction. And we refer to it as love, and it's not love.
Right.
Yeah.
It's chemicals.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's chemicals.
Yes.
And so because, as you're saying, Dre, we now throw out of the window because those chemicals are operating in our systems. Like, oh my God, I just love this person. It's like, oh, this is the one. The last one was not the one
This is the one.
that you met 3 months ago, because the brain is not going to be able to sustain that level of high for too much longer than
Sure.
that. Now, Folks, time will not allow us to get into limerence right now, but at some point in another episode, we're going to get into limerence because and go and do your research before we get there. Dr. Dorothy Tenoff. Go and look at the work of Dr. Dorothy Tenoff. Go and have a look at the work of Dr. Helen Fisher. Go and have a look at the work of Dr. David Boss. These are authorities on the issue of when we talk about the chemicals that flood our system. And once again, because we've not been told, taught, and trained to look at these kinds of things, we are just out of the window, right out of the gate. And we're in trouble. We're in serious trouble in that regard. So, listen, we need to begin to bring this to a close. But, four-dimensional love. As we say in the islands of the Bahamas, you probably do in Jamaica and maybe in Italy and Argentina as well. No fisherman calls his fish stink, right? And I believe in the four-dimensional love model. Again, it's a theory. It's a theory. But here's what I've come to know in the past several years, that ever since its evolution, or the beginning of its evolution in 2003, and particularly with the work that I've done with a number of individuals, which, by the way, let me very quickly say this as we run out of time, the model has evolved in such a way that my clinical practice has shifted its primary focus from working with married couples to working with dating couples, and introducing this model from the very beginning of that relationship and helping them nurture that thing from match to matrimony. Now, at the expense of sounding how it's going to sound, I've been extremely successful with this, right? When I look at all, particularly in the past 10 years, when I switched the focus, and all of the individuals that I've worked with, and there have been a number, only one couple has divorced. Is that because of me and my model? Yes!
Not because the people is conscious.
Not because of that. Forget them. Forget them. You know, they were just dazed. They were just dazed. No, it's really because of them. And I think there's something to be said about this educational quality that we unfortunately have not given sufficient credit to. We're beginning to do that. So, four-dimensional love, I think it works. A lot of work to be done. But I appreciate your participation in at least this conversation. Many more conversations to come. You're going to be with us in the next episode as we talk more about how men and women are similar and different in their views of love, and what can we do about that, if anything. So, take a couple seconds here, up to several seconds, and give me your final thoughts, views on the model perhaps, but more so what this conversation has meant for you, or look into the camera and say to the audience what you would like for them to walk away with, if anything. Ladies first.
Okay. I think, as I told you, conscience is number one. So you have to be aware about what you want, and don't just buy the script the society give you. So don't go follow to that script, but think what is really, what really is good for you. So, and then as you said in the beginning, if you work in yourself, you can be ready to develop a relationship with somebody else.
Absolutely.
In a healthy way.
Absolutely.
I love this model. It's been a great roadmap for myself. It really has helped me align to truly know what the real meaning of love is, and what you're really looking for. I love these conversations as well too. At the end of the day, it is just a theory. There's so many different books and things that we have now that we haven't had before. But this resonates with me, and I love having these conversations because it's like listening to someone who's a gym instructor, right? A physical, like everyone has their ways of getting you to where you need to be, which is healthy, right? And so if you want healthy, meaningful relationships, this is just a good avenue that's helped me. So I think it's a good one.
Well, as you know, I've been recently introduced to this theory. It gives me hope. Yeah, and You know, it definitely could be a guide to get into where we want to go.
Sure.
You know, we have to explore it some more, but it does give me hope, and I will say that.
Excellent. Excellent. Milady.
I think that the theory does resonate with me without knowing the scientific background or really knowing these specific dimensions. I feel like it relates to me. These things make sense. I would encourage the viewers to explore it and just
Sure.
kind of think about how you see yourself moving through or across, you know, this model. I think it works, and I think if you applied it to yourself, it could probably get you to where you want to be.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Four-dimensional love. At least this is the first in our four-part series on the four-dimensional love model. Again, go to the website and complete the questionnaire and see where you fall in the model and see if it works for you. Reach out to us, talk to us through social media, write us, email us. Let's keep the conversation going. This is Dr. Sam Hasty. It's been my pleasure spending time with you. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Have a great day.